Hello all and welcome. My name is Margaret. I'm a historical costumer and textile conservator in training. And today on this channel I am going to be making a Bridgerton inspired Regency gown for my sister for the Bridgerton experience. So this dress I designed in collaboration with my sister. Obviously I wanted it to be somewhat historically accurate because I am a fiend for that sort of thing, but obviously it's for my sister, so I didn't want to go too overboard. Obviously it also had to be inspired by the show Bridgerton. The experience is all about Bridgerton. Bridgerton, if you want my long and short of the costumes, I think they're fabulous, but not historically accurate. It's a fantasy, that's what it's supposed to be. It's a lot of frou, a lot of frill, a lot of sparkle, a lot of glitz, a lot of glam. And so that's what I tried to bring to this dress. Now you will see throughout this video plans did end up changing. Unfortunately there were some fit issues with the dress, which was basically all my fault. I'll be honest, this was my first time ever making something for someone else and I should have taken more time with the fittings. Pro tip from this video, if you are making a dress for somebody, make sure to fit the lining or toile to them and not just be like, oh, it doesn't fit, and then guess. That's what I did. Don't do that. I used a pattern by Kitty J. Berry on Etsy. I will link it. I did significantly alter the skirt pattern to make it more historically accurate and also didn't follow any of the directions. There was like a tutorial video, didn't do any of that. Watch her tutorial video for how to actually put together the pattern and watch this for entertainment. So I hope you enjoy watching the process of sewing this dress. After printing out and taping up the pattern, I laid out my fabric to cut out the bodice portion. I should note that before this, I did make a toile, which was much too big. It did not fit my sister when she came for a fitting, and I did not fit it to her. I was like, oh, it's too big, we'll just go down a size. Don't do that. Actually fit it onto your human being, which sounds like, you know, a thing that's normal and usual, but you've seen these videos. I'm often literally just like, well, and we're winging it. Don't do that when you're making it for someone else. Do as I say, not as I do. And I have learned my lesson on this one. But anyway, I used this beautiful cut of silk satin that I got off of Facebook Marketplace a while ago for the body of the dress. And then I used a polyester organza overlay to give it that sparkle. I really ended up loving this color combo, and I'm glad that I was able to use this cut of fabric for this dress. I also traced and cut out the linen lining. I cut this pattern out with extra seam allowance around it because I'm so used to working with net patterns because I didn't read the directions, and that was a problem later on. Next, I ironed everything, which I always do. I just rarely film it. Ironing is a really important step to any sewing project, so don't skip it. I cut out the skirt next. To make this a bit more historically accurate, I did cut the front panel completely straight and the portion of the side panel completely straight as well, just to give it that sort of flat front look. The pattern sort of had a more modern sort of flare skirt situation going on. As you can see, this fabric is super narrow. It's only 36 inches across, which means I used the full 6 yards of this cut of fabric for this project. Next, it was time for the polyester overlay. They called this a pearlized organza in the store, which added this wonderful shimmer that I was looking for and is perfect for a Bridgerton project. I just roughly cut this to the shape of the pieces so I would have some wiggle room if things accidentally shifted. But I did baste the bodice overlays to the silk satin with large pad stitches. This is another step that I don't recommend skipping if you are doing an overlay like this because it really decreases a lot of headache later on. The skirts were constructed separately, however, so no pad stitching required. I sewed the overlay together with French seams. Extremely important to do French seams on this because it frayed like nobody's business and also is sheer, so it needed to be both nice looking and completely encased. So French seams were the way to go. They took forever. I don't know why, but they really did. I took my time on these. I constructed the satin skirt portion with just plain seams, pinked the salvages. This was a very well-behaved fabric. It doesn't fray very much, and I'm not going to wash this piece because I can't even imagine having to do that. So it was, you know, perfect seam finishing. Next, it was time to sew the darts in the seams of the linen lining, which I did. Also repeated that process on the fashion fabric. And then I put the right sides together of the lining and the fashion fabric and sewed the neckline, the back neck, and the back side pieces. Do not sew the armholes shut. I may have done that, and it might have been very late on a work night, and I wasn't thinking. So don't do that. I then turned the pieces right side out, making sure to get those corners crisp, and understitched the lining. This is where you sew the seam allowance to the lining so that the lining doesn't roll up and show when the dress is being worn. This is a modern technique, not a historical technique, and is really, really helpful if you're doing things like this. I would 100% recommend doing it. Of course, I gave it a solid press after that too, just to set everything in place. Next, it was time for the sleeves, everyone's favorite portion of the project. I set these by hand because I hate doing sleeves by machine, and I basically refuse to do it at this point. The sleeves were puffed on both the top and bottom portions, so I gathered down the bottom portion first. I attached the sleeve band by machine and then folded it under and finished it with whip stitches on the underside. I gathered the top of the sleeve head and set it in place with back running stitches. I originally set them just into the fashion fabric because I was going to do some sort of finishing thing with the lining, which I didn't really think through. Just set them with the lining. It's really not a big deal. And I used whip stitches to finish off the seam allowance. Next, I gathered the back portion of the skirt and pinned it onto the bodice and sewed these together, leaving out the lining. I ironed the seam allowance up, turned in the lining once, and whip stitched it all to finish it off. This created a wonderful finished interior so that the seam allowances are protected, there's minimal fraying, and the wearer is just far more comfortable. Hemming was up next. I did a double fold hem with whip stitches on both layers, making sure to press everything very, very well. This took some time, but I love hand-sewn hems, and I think they really add a wonderful sort of historical detail to costumes, and also I do them on modern projects because they just look better. And that was the main construction of the dress done! So let's play with some sparkly things, shall we? I bought quite a few sequined appliques for this project. I accidentally spent way too much money. When you go to the garment district, ask how much they are per piece, because sometimes they don't label them, and then you get up to the register and you're too embarrassed to be like, it's too much money. No regrets though, I think they look great, and I think that I bought just the right amount. I really love sort of the hem details in the Regency. It's both a sort of wonderful style choice, but it's also practical in that it kept the floaty hems of the Regency in place, so they weren't just flopping everywhere. The Bridgerton costume designers also used this style quite a lot, and I was looking at a lot of reference images with this sort of hem detail, and so I decided that I definitely needed some hem detailing on this dress. I placed the sequin leaf appliques around the hem on the organza and adjusted their spacing and placement. And I played around with a couple of different trim options for the bodice. I was sending pictures to my sister, seeing what she thought, and we settled on this central bouquet of sequin flowers with leaf accents and a silk satin ribbon waist. Hello! Just thought I would update you guys on this dress really quickly. So I did the majority of the construction, and then on Friday night I realized that I had done it completely incorrectly. The construction is still good, like I did all the steps. I realized that I'm so used to working with patterns that are cut net that this was cut with seam allowance. I should have cut it just around the pattern piece, but I gave myself that extra seam allowance. I don't know what I was thinking. But essentially I made it about 4 inches too big. So I had to unpick the waist, I had to unpick the underarms and the shoulder seam and take it in by about 2 inches for the bust and then 4 inches for the waist. So I'm gonna flip you around and show you what it looks like now. So this is what we've got now. It looks amazing. I'm really enjoying it. And then I also, it was like really late on Friday, and I just started pinning things on and texting my sister to sort of see what she was thinking about the trimmings. So we're gonna go with this nice sort of bouquet of sequined flowers with the sequined leaves, just a nice little silk ribbon for the waist. And then on the bottom, this is my favorite part, these little appliques all the way around to sort of give it some interest.
This is very sort of Regency-esque, but in a very Bridgerton way. So I am going to sew all these down, and then the dress is gonna be done. I'm very excited.
I secured the placement of the appliques with silk thread. It thankfully does not take too many stitches to hold these in place, so it was a quick process. I secured the waist ribbon with stab stitches, and I left long tails in the back to be tied into a bow. Off camera, I also added the closures, which were just hook and eyes, and that was the dress done.
So, update on the Bridgerton dress. I finished it for my sister. I shipped it back with my parents when they were here. It did not fit her. She shipped it back to me here in New York. I recut the bodice to the new measurements that she sent me, and I sent it back to her, hoping that it would get there before she needed to leave for the ball. It got there 30 minutes too late, so she did not go to the Bridgerton experience with the dress that I made her. But then I was talking to my mother on the phone, and she was like, well, she needs to go again. So we are actually going to go when I'm home, and then we're going to go with my other sister as well. So I need to make a Regency dress for myself in the matter of about 2 weeks. So I am not going to film that process because this needs to get done, but very excited to show you the finished result. So I hope you enjoy the incoming Bridgerton experience content.
I am really proud of how this dress turned out in its construction and its details. I was a little disappointed that I wasn't able to get it fit correctly the first 3 times. And it's definitely a learning process for me in, sewing for other people, because it's not something that I do very often. It's something that I think I need to get better at. Me and my sisters had a great time at the Bridgerton Ball. As you can see, my dress that I made is a pink silk taffeta, which I just had in my stash. I had this really cool marabou trim in my stash as well that I had been saving for a project. Bought the chenille trim, which I'm definitely going to use on another project as well. I didn't use that much here. And then I also used some silk ribbon that I bought in the garment district. This all came together in a couple of days. I used the same pattern as my sister's dress, so I didn't really film a ton of it, but of course I cut it to my size. And then my other sister wore the robe à la française. If you are a watcher of this channel, you will know that there's a playlist where you can watch the making of that dress too, which I will pop down below. But of course, it's just wonderful to spend time with my family. It was so lovely to have a couple weeks at home, and I really enjoyed it. So I hope you enjoyed watching that sewing process and also seeing me and my sisters at the Bridgerton Ball. We did have a lot of fun. I had a wonderful 3 weeks at home, but I am happy to be back here in New York City, getting back to work, getting back to school, and getting back to making content for all of you guys. So if you would like to follow along here for more content coming soon, you can of course click the subscribe button down below. You can go to my Instagram and my TikTok at costumeandconservation. I swear I'll post a TikTok again at some point. You can also just have a great day. Yeah, and like this video if you liked it. See you in the next one. Bye.